Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Robert Phoenix, and we are now streaming live over on the 15 Minutes of Flame side of things. And in just a moment, the stream will be happening over on YouTube. So we're connecting the nodes in the network and getting ready to fire up here on a Monday. And we are now live on YouTube, and we're all here. Now I just have to wait for everything to kind of catch up in an approximation of real time. We got 6 people watching now. 9 people. Come on, we can get it up to 12. Here we go. 11. One more. There's Raven. Hey, Raven. There's Judy. Hello, Judy. So Doris Day has passed away today at the age of 97. America's sweetheart, Doris Day. She lived a bit of a duplicitous life, I have to say, right? Bit of a duplicitous life. It's okay. It's Hollywood. She did all those films with Rock Hudson, Pillow Talk, and all that stuff, right? And Rock Hudson was as queer as a $3 bill. I mean, Doris, of course, knew that. She was happy to have a movie career. She was happy probably not to have a leading man who wanted to get inside of her, right? But that's duplicitous. They're playing this, but this is Hollywood. This is Hollywood. Hollywood is a vortex of duplicity. And so she participated in a lie. You know, and the lie was, we're going to give you kind of, modern day restoration morality plays, and we're going to update the themes, and we're going to put Rock Hudson as the leading guy, the masculine, manly leading guy, and Doris Day as everybody's sweetheart. She's the kind of anti-Marilyn Monroe blonde. Marilyn Monroe is dangerous. Doris Day was not dangerous at all. And that's the way Hollywood works. Now, some people, Emily, who may be listening, who's a Dodger fan, one of the things that Doris Day did was that Doris Day had had an affair with Maury Wills, who was a player for the Los Angeles Dodgers. When I say affair, that Doris Day was married, and she was seeing Maury Wills on the side, and Maury Wills happened to be a black American, right? So, number one, she's crossing the matrimonial line. She's committing adultery. And number two, in America during the 1960s, she was having a biracial affair, which if America ever found out that Doris Day was committing adultery and having an affair with a black man, I don't think her career at the box office would have done as well. By the time that was happening, Doris Day was kind of, her career was slowing down just a little bit. But anyway, Doris Day passed away at the age of 97. Doris, she had a really good run and probably had a lot of stories you could have told, but didn't. Another American from a different time sails off into the sunset. What will America be like when the last of the baby boomers leaves the planet? This is something that I've thought about and I've talked about. I've talked about it with people. I've talked about it on the show before. It's going to be a very, very different planet than the one that we're inhabiting now. We can already see the signs of kind of an encroachment, a social encroachment. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing. It will be a thing, and it will be a level of development that is going to take place. And some of us will be here to witness it. A lot of you Gen Xers will be here to witness it. Some pre-Gen Xers might. Look who's here. It's the golden one. He is just into the scene right now. Okay, just stand, get back behind me. There you go. I know. You miss your loving and adoring fans too, as much as you miss me. I get it. I totally did. Hey, we did a pretty good show last night. 2 hours of astrology. Some really interesting stuff around Rami Malek's chart. He's the guy, he's the actor that played Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. And Freddie Mercury's chart, really, really interesting conjunctions with key planets. And felt like there was kind of a bit of a channeling going on between the two. Like they couldn't have picked, in some ways, a better actor to portray Freddie Mercury. You're not just content to be back there, you've got to be up here now. Everybody say hello to Jasper. Say good morning to Jasper. Yes, Jasper. I know. They've missed you too, I'm sure. So anyway, if you're into astrology, check out last night's show. And I think most of you who were in the chat room today will probably already have. So tell your friends about it. I mean, this is kind of a unique experience. I don't know too many people that cover astrology and get into astrology and then do current events and weave the two together. I mean, they're out there, but I don't think there's kind of another version of this. So, and again, I want to thank you for being able to participate and be a part of it, not only from your presence, but also because your contributions have allowed me to stream this vis-a-vis YouTube, YouTube and the 15 Minutes of Flame site, which I think it's important because the topography in YouTube is changing very, very quickly. And there are people who are making adjustments to their game. And one of the people that I like to listen to every now and then is Nathan Stoltman over on Lift the Veil. And Nathan is trying to figure out a way to migrate off of YouTube. He does a lot of stuff on Twitch. He does a lot of stuff on D Live now, and he does some simulcasting. So people are realizing that I wouldn't say that the game is over on YouTube, but it's getting infinitely more restrictive. I'll give you an example. Last night I played really about less than 2 minutes of a clip between Jordan Peterson and Russell Brand, and I even put a link into the chat promoting the conversation between Peterson and Brand. And within mere minutes after my show was over, I received a copyright claim from Russell Brand by using his video. And I'm like, really? I mean, look, Russell Brand's got 1.8 million subscribers. Unless Russell Brand thinks I'm besmirching his name, and I wasn't besmirching his name. I didn't say anything derogatory about Russell Brand. I was merely commenting on the fact that they being Brand and Jordan Peterson were discussing Russell's addiction in terms of third party, which I felt was very Gemini-like. They were addressing the addiction as an entity in some ways, which I think is actually kind of accurate. I was much more critical of Jordan Peterson, and I didn't get a copyright claim from Jordan Peterson. Obviously, it wasn't on his channel. So this is how restrictive YouTube is getting. I also had a video from 2012, and I used a piece of music from my friend Jorge Reyes, who's no longer on the planet, and The Orchard, a company I actually worked with for a while, put in a copyright claim because I used a minute and a half of his music from 2012. It's from 2012. So I'm not sure if it took that long for the bots to catch up to it, but now YouTube is being intensely retroactive in terms of what people have put on their streams. So it's beginning to get very kind of two-dimensional in some ways, very flat in terms of what we can sort of put up. That doesn't mean that you can't still avail oneself of the YouTube opportunity, but it's just becoming much more restrictive, and particularly the case of the the speech thing, right? Yes, I know. He's been very, very needy since I've gotten back. I was gone 5 days. I'm here for you, man. I'm your bro. Okay. So I wanted to talk about a couple of. Well, really want to talk about one thing today. I today I've got a kind of a target that I want to fly over, and I kind of got into a little bit last night, and then tomorrow I want to look a little bit more about what's happening in Iran, because it's certainly moving from the back burner to the front burner. The United States was not entirely successful. In fact, they weren't successful at all in ousting Maduro from Venezuela. That was a failed coup attempt, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to go back in there anytime soon in order to do a regime change. And I'm not saying that Maduro is a great guy. Maduro, I like saying the Spanish version, Maduro. I don't think he's a great guy. The era of a strong man in terms of government is always an iffy proposition. Because on the one hand, if you have somebody who's strong enough and has enough leverage and power, they can literally cut through opposition like a laser. And sometimes the opposition gets in the way of doing things. Sometimes the opposition represents a check and a balance against tyranny. It's a very fine line. Very, very fine line. So there are times when it takes a person to come in. I mean, I see it with sports. You'll see somebody who will come in and will take over a program, they'll take over a team, and they'll run it in a very kind of efficient, sort of a top-down manner. And the one example that I would use that I think most people in sports would probably relate to is Bill Belichick, who is the coach of the New England Patriots. He basically does everything. He drafts the players, he makes the trades, he decides on who plays, who doesn't play, and it's one person, and Belichick's an Aries, so he's in charge of it all, and the Patriots have been extremely successful. I think they've had a little help along the way, but that's a whole other story. I'm just giving you an example of how somebody can come in and change the culture. And the one thing that Belichick has is sustainability. He's been doing this for a long time. I saw with Jim Harbaugh, who's the coach at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh can come into a situation, in a dismal one, like the Michigan Wolverines were, and turn it around through the sheer force and the will of his personality. Now with Harbaugh, there's a high burnout effect. But this is the potential that one person can make. Now, the downside of that is that person can become tyrannical. And in San Francisco, where Harbaugh burned out, and he has a tendency to burn out, there were people that did not like how he was conducting business, notably the owner and his henchmen. So they essentially ousted Harbaugh in a political coup. And it was very much like a coup that would take place in any country. There was disinformation, there was leaks, there were all kinds of things until Harbaugh was essentially cornered in his own organization, did not have the power to make the changes any longer, and left. He left for another opportunity, and coincidentally, the Niners have sucked ever since. Now, I'm not saying that the strong man is a long-term solution. Right? Because what happens if you concentrate too much power with one person, it can get very, very dicey. We've seen examples of this in the past. We can see examples of this in the present. Like I think Angela Merkel has a great deal of power. I think Benjamin Netanyahu and Putin all have a great deal of power. And it's all concentrated. I think Xi in China has a great deal of power. And even Donald Trump to some extent, although I think he's more of a figurehead in a lot of ways. It's the same deal. So Maduro comes out of that Latin America strongman kind of system. and they like them down there. They embrace the machismo, right? They embrace the machismo with a side of socialism. It's I guess it fits a lot of different kinds of categories and needs. Anyway, but it looks like Iran is coming to the front burner, and it's something that we should really start to pay attention to. Now, I've been dubious about a war with Iran, but given the fact that Jared Kushner is right at Trump's elbow, I think that the potential for that war becomes more highlighted. There's more of a charge around it. I got wind of Jared Kushner's Middle East peace plan last night, and it's not a great plan, to be honest with you. Essentially, what they want to do is they want to eventually get the Palestinians out of Gaza and out of Jerusalem, and kind of just get them out somewhere in the Sinai. Just get them out in the Sinai. And there's a lot of kind of reapportioning of land and space. And part of this deal is that Egypt will begin to take on some of the Palestinian burden. And Egypt does not want to do that. But essentially, how this thing has been set up is that if the terms and conditions of Jared Kushner's Middle East peace plan are not abided by, well, both Palestine, quote-unquote, the Palestinians, and the Israelis would lose all of their funding. That they would stop to get money. Now, the way that the deal's been weighted is that if you're Israel, you're looking at this deal, you're going like, where's the paper? If you're the Palestinians, it's like, are you kidding me? I mean, that's how it's gone down. And by the way, there is a provision in this deal where, of course, money is being transferred, that the United States, the taxpayers, are going to be liable for 20% of funding this tax deal. 20%. Okay? 20%. Actually, I think I take that back. I think it's about 15, with the EU putting in about 4 or 5. But still, 15%. I mean, there's a huge amount of money already going in that direction every single day. So I think the Israelis, of course, will accept Jared Kushner's proposed peace. But Jared Kushner, man, God, the guy couldn't even get into Harvard without his father's assistance. And there he is, like he's creating the master plan, the global master plan. His immigration plan is coming out this week. His Middle East peace plan is going to be hatched. I mean, what doesn't he do now? I mean, basically, we're looking at President Kushner. Anyway, this is not what I wanted to talk about today. I'm just giving you a heads up for tomorrow. Today, there are some things that I wanted to talk about, and it's in the title of today's show. It's called Dysphoric Dystopia. And I'm going to read you a couple of different stories that I think are very troubling and speak to some of the challenges of our time. I read this story last night on the 11th House live stream, and it comes from Oregon, Woodburn, Oregon, and parents sue elementary school teacher after forced transgender education and transition. So this was, I'm going to put the link here in both chats so you guys can work with it. Maduro means ripe. Robert, potential false flag, hit a tank or two. Yeah, they'll false flag up. They're gonna false flag up the whole Iran thing. And if Americans die, if American soldiers die, American workers die, that'll give them, some credence to go in and start, kicking ass and taking names and all that stuff. But all the real American assets will be out of Iran by that point in time. So this is from last night. I'm going to go over to the 15-minute side, and I'm going to throw this in there. Who's on the chat in 15 minutes? I'm not seeing anybody for now, but there are people there. Let me throw this in there. There you guys go. So I talked about this on last night's show a little bit. I just want to give a recap because I don't want to do too much redundancy. But basically, what happened here is that there was an 8-year-old boy, and the boy went to a school in Woodburn, Oregon. Okay, Woodburn, Oregon. It is not Portland. They're clear to point that out because they say, well, hey, it could be a lot worse in Portland. You know, your kid could go to Voodoo Donuts one day and not show up for a couple of weeks. Anyway, the parents of an 8-year-old boy in Woodburn, Oregon are suing the school district. The figure on this kind of it trips me out. $999,999. Why don't you just throw the extra dollar in there? After they say their son was taken away from recess and forced to sit through transgender re-education, as school officials thought the boy wanted to transition and encouraged him to seek gender reassignment. I mean, what the fuck is going on here? To me, this just boggles the mind. It's just blowing my mind that these institutions are given free rein now to push gender reassignment. I mean, it just blows my mind. Totally blows my mind. It's like, no, we're not going to talk to the parents. You know, let's just even give this some level of credibility. It's just a modicum of credibility. Let's just say, for instance, that there is something behind this gender dysphoric wave that's sweeping the planet. And the teacher noticed the boy who did not want to go and use the restroom, the public restroom. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, when I was 6, 7 years old, right, using a public restroom at the school, to me, was kind of an alienating experience. Then again, I'm a Virgo. Because first of all, the restrooms were really cold. They were cold. I went to an old school. There wasn't anything fancy about it. Right? The bathrooms in that school came from the 1930s. So when I first went to that bathroom, I was like, you know, what's going on here? I'm not sure how I feel about all this. Right? But, of course, there's a level of socialization that takes place. You know, by the time you're in the 3rd grade, you're shoving toilet paper down the toilets to the point where they won't flush. No, I never did that, by the way. But I know kids that did. Anyway, so I understand this kid did not want to use the restroom because he was having problems with his stomach. The teacher saw it and thought that he did not want to go into the boys' room because he didn't feel like he was a boy. Now, if that's the case, maybe a little phone call to the parents. Hey, Mom and Dad, I noticed that Jimmy didn't want to use the boys' room at school. Is Jimmy okay? Mom and Dad come on the phone and say, Jimmy's got an intestinal issue. He has a very difficult time using public restrooms, which is why he's using the faculty restroom. So he's really outside of this condition with his digestion. He's really okay. Okay, great. Is there anything I can do to help him feel more comfortable? Wow, what a conversation that would be. Right? Or even if the teacher was slanted and had an investment in dysphoria, gender dysphoria, they could even make that call and say, or ask, does Jimmy ever want to play with dolls or anything like that? No, he's had a normal kind of play life. He plays with the kids down the street, boys and girls. Oh, okay, because I was just wondering if Jimmy's okay with being a boy. Oh, yeah, he's really okay with being a boy. You keep your fucking hands off him, okay? No, I mean, she could even have that conversation. I mean, it's not a great conversation to have because teachers shouldn't be doing that. But apparently now they've been empowered to do that in certain schools and in certain states around the country. But none of those phone calls happened. There was no protocol in place. Instead, what she did is she pulled the kid out and started giving the kid gender reassignment materials, having him watch videos, having him read books. about the gender transitioning kid named Jazz. And apparently there's a PBS cartoon about a trans. Look, I'm totally old school on this, okay? I'm the get off your lawn guy around this. I feel like part of what's happening is that there is an agenda that's in place. And there are people that I believe are embedded in the agenda. There are other people that I think are useful dupes and think they're doing humanity a service because this is the front lines of, in their mind, biological and personal oppression. And if they can liberate a young person from a lifetime of biological and personal oppression, they believe they're doing a good thing. And I'm saying that these are the people that are kind of on the front lines. And there are other people that are embedded, and they know exactly what they're doing, and they want to flip the script. And I've delved into that scenario in a very big way. And the flipping the script has to do with the transgender medical industry. So much money is being pumped into this world by very specific people, some of which are already on the transgender tip. So there's a huge amount of money, big, very, very deep pockets that are being invested in lobbying, that are being invested in research, that are being invested in medical patents, because they get a customer for life. You flip somebody's genetic code, their genetic script, you get a customer for life. They've always got to take the hormones, and there are always going to be new, quote-unquote, inventions. They're always working on stuff to somehow accommodate this sea change in our sexual identity. Okay, so we know this is going on, but the problem that I have with it now is that a person cannot speak out against this. Can't speak out against it. Not at all. Not at all. So I wanted to. Okay, there are a couple of things here. I got to find the right. Okay, I got to find the right. Here we go. Okay, so there's a guy by the name of Ray Blanchard, and I just came across this. Ray Blanchard, you can look him up. Ray Blanchard served on the Gender Dysphoria Working Group and chaired the Paraphilia Working Group for DSM-V or DSM-5. So, okay, DSM, that is the disorder manual that psychotherapists, it is the Bible, right? It is the disorder Bible. If there's a disorder, it's in the DSM, and it's always expanding. There are always more and more disorders, right? The DSM started out about that thick at one time. That was about that thick. He is a world expert in the field. In the field. Okay. Twitter suspended his account for a thread setting out his findings from a lifetime of research. So Ray Blanchard has come out and said that gender dysphoria is a mental illness. But this is a guy who is embedded. Let me read you again. Let me read you the bona fides here. He was part of the Gender Dysphoria Working Group and chaired the Paraphilia Working Group for DSM-5. He's a world expert in the field. And Twitter suspended him because he said that gender dysphoria is a mental illness. You can't approach this now at any level without having your hand slapped or having some account either threatened or suspended. Just think about this. Think about the percentage, the very, very small, very slight percentage of people who actually feel this way. And think about the broad, generalized, sweeping denouncement for anybody that approaches this from a different angle, which is probably about 95% of the population. most of which are too afraid to talk about it. And what happens? You get deplatformed, or you get suspended, or shadow banned, or whatever. And why is that? What are the forces? What are the powerful forces lurking behind all this? You know, Martina Navratilova, who is a very, very prominent LGBT kind of Q icon, right? She came in, she was the Venus Williams of her time with tennis, and she came out and she spoke out against the fact that transitioning people, i.e. men transitioning to women, coming into women's sports, were dominating women's sports, and she didn't think it was a good idea. Well, somebody got into her ear because she quickly recanted that. And the reason why she quickly recanted it is because at a very high level, there's a network of very powerful people who will make sure that if you don't toe the line, you will never work again. You will never earn another cent again. Just look at the Australian rules football player who may never play. This guy's the equivalent of Michael Jordan in Australian rules football. He may never play again because he put Bible verses on Twitter that denounce homosexuality. Look, I am not here to bang that drum, right? I'm not here to bang, but I'll tell you, I've always championed the underdog in some ways, and in this case, he is the underdog, right? So if the script was flipped and somebody who was talking about, hey, you know, I'm a woman and I really want to be a guy, and Twitter banned them, I would support that person. I would support that person. I would say this person has a right to express their views. This person has a right to express their opinion. You know, why would you shut them down? Because I've always gone in that direction. I've always gone in that direction. I've always gone to the side that is being somehow truncated or marginalized. And now that truncation and marginalization just so happens to have arrived at this point in time in my life with kind of a specific demographic, which is this demographic. So now I'm part of the marginalization to some extent. I'm a symbol of the marginalization that's taking place. And quite frankly, I'm not okay with it. But I wouldn't be okay with it with any group. Because I feel like we all have to have, at the very least, an equal platform to share our points of view. And I know at this point in time, that's just complete Pollyanna. Because that's not what's happening. Let me throw in another story here. This is from California. This is on the same topic. Porn or vital life lessons. California approves controversial new sex education approach. Shakes his head. I'll throw this in the chat. Here we go. Homeschool your children. Absolutely. Absolutely. But they're even going to get into that, right? Oregon is already getting their claws into that. They want to get into your home. They want to make sure that you're not abusing your kid. They want to have visits, right? They want to have visits. This is over on the 15-minute side. I'm putting the link in there so you guys can follow along. There's the link. I'm going to read this to you. California Department of Education approved controversial changes in the state's health and sex education framework on Wednesday, but removed 5 resources and books that some organizations called sexually explicit, including a book that explains sex to students as young as kindergarten. Can you imagine that? You got a 5-year-old kid, and they're like freaking talking about sex to a 5-year-old kid in a public school. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? It's like the desecration of innocence. These people are intent, absolutely intent on desecrating innocence. Despite large protests, the department unanimously approved new guidelines for elementary school grades about sex trafficking, sexual orientation, and how to support transgender and non-conforming students in the classroom. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about people that are protesting. They don't. They're going to do what they're going to do. They will turn a deaf ear. And what they do in any situation, and I'm not just using this as an example. Well, I am using this as an example, but they will throw the kitchen sink at everything, right? They're gonna throw. We're going way out there, man. And then they get some pushback and they get some noise, and then what do? They pull a few things off the table, but they get what they want. The department's meeting focused on revisions for a health education framework, which makes K through 12 public school health curriculum recommendations for the next decade. More than 120 people signed up for public comment to support or oppose the changes. The meeting was preceded by a rally at Capitol Park where nearly 200 people gathered to protest the framework revisions. How are they helping kids find themselves when they're confusing them about who they are? Or they could possibly be nothing at all, says Stephanie Yates, founder of Informed Parents of California. The organization has grown to over 20,000 members since it was founded last year. Yates took to the dais at the meeting to criticize the Department of Education board members for approving decisions on behalf of the state's children. Dozens of people who filled the building's lobby cheered as they watched Yates on a live feed call the new revision part of a political agenda, and like others, referred to the material as pornography. But others supported the changes. What we are seeing in the Sacramento community is an open arms approach to this curriculum, said Cherry Grevin, the local Planned Parenthood director of public affairs. A number of parents spoke up saying they were in favor of this. One father told me he allowed his son to open a new line of communication about these topics. Why would a father encourage this? If the father wants to talk to his kid about that line of topics, Dad, why don't you go down to Planned Parenthood and get an orientation? Because I'm sure they will reprogram you to the point where you can now talk to your kid and say, you know what, David, if you ever feel like a Darla, just let me know. Because sometimes being a boy is difficult. And sometimes maybe being a girl is a little bit easier. If you feel like a little bit like a girl, just let me know. I got a little dress over here. I picked it up at Kohl's. I'm not sure it's your size or not. But I'm just going to put it over here in your closet, just in case you want to take it out of the closet. And by the way, out of the closet means something. And if you'd like to know what out of the closet means, I'd be happy to tell you. I mean, come on, this is bullshit. Dad, if you want to talk to your kid about this stuff, you don't need the school, okay? Those are the changes that stirred controversies involve sex education. After rising levels of sexually transmitted diseases in teenagers nationwide, this framework was created to help provide necessary education to ensure that students are equipped to make informed and educated decisions when it comes to their sexual health. Education Department spokesperson Kendra Britt said in the statement, it was also designed to take the needs of our LGBTQ youth into consideration to make sure they felt safe and supported while at school. Several organizations called the revisions sexually explicit and say the framework's recommended books show how offensive, reckless, and immoral the framework is. The Education Department removed 5 of the books, but clarified they were not banning the books. Oh, okay. According to the state's website, the books were listed as resources for parents to discuss sensitive issues with their children at home. Why do you have to discuss sensitive issues with your children at home? Like, there's a time for discussion, right? There's a time to have sensitive issue talks. But there's a time for children to just be children, to allow them the wonder of discovery and innocence and nature and magic and play and spontaneity. This is, we're basically polluting their experience. We're polluting. Do you remember when you were a kid, some of the kind of the magical, slightly visionary times? I remember a kid looking at a water running through the gutter, or somebody was washing their car up the street. And to me, that water became the river of time. And I was allowed to daydream and have my own thoughts. And I didn't need to have fucking sensitive discussions with my parents at that age. I was a kid. Right? But now all of a sudden we want to get into their heads and we just want to start screwing around with their heads because life is scary, life is dangerous, life is complex, and the sooner we get into their heads and get them to think along these terms, their life will somehow be better because they're going to be more informed. No, it's confusing. It's confusing. Sorry, I'm on a bit of a roll here. I'm just not into it, obviously. So here's another piece. This is related. California quickly becoming modern-day Babylon with grotesque sex ed aimed at kindergartners. This is from Madness Hub. It's a little supporting material here. I'm going to throw in. Let me throw it over here. Darcy says, my daughter went that way with my grandbaby, who is 10 now. Her name is Joey. I'm sorry, Darcy. Edgardo says, I became aware of the whole transgender movement when Angelina Jolie claimed her daughter identified as a male. Then Pink said the same thing about her daughter, and Charlize Theron, same with her son. They're being told to do that. They're being directed to do that. That's a top-down. That is a top-down message. Right. Top-down talking point. Rhonda says, I still avoid public restrooms. I don't blame you, Rhonda. Ani says, homosexuality is one thing, and biologically and psychologically altering children is a whole other. I agree. You know, back in the days when I lived in California, you know, they had the vote on same-sex marriage, which lost, by the way. The vote lost, and then they quickly got it to a gay judge who was basically labeled as a libertarian. So I guess that made it okay. He's a libertarian. He thought these things through. And this was the most libertarian thing to do, was to overturn the vote of the people. And that's what happened. It's just like that. Just like that. And of course, during the run-up of that vote to allow gay marriage in California, the LGBTQ, there was no T there at the time, community decided and said, oh, don't worry, we won't get into the schools and promote homosexuality to your children. We just want equal rights. And off camera, like, you know, that's exactly what they've done. You can't trust anybody in politics. All right, let me read this to you here. California State Board of Education approved new sex education guidance on Wednesday. Okay, we just discussed that. The new guidance tells teachers that students in kindergarten can identify as transgender and offer tips on how to talk about that. I mean, come on. You've got a cadre of teachers now who have been indoctrinated in social Marxist theory and identity politics. These are the people that are teaching your kids. That's who's teaching your children now. They've gone through the reorientation centers known as the university. And they've been completely reoriented, and now they are in the process of taking their training from the university level and then bringing it into the public schools. They're not even waiting now for your kids to get to college to convert them. The conversion is happening as soon as they enter that door. All right, here we go. The document consists of more than 700 pages and includes guidelines on a variety of health-related issues. But the most heinous guidelines are related to sex education. 700 pages. Could you imagine working on that? There are people that sit down and work on this stuff. 700 pages. It might be bigger than the Bible. That's some dedication. That is dedication. Where does that dedication come from? What is the motivation of that dedication to come up with those 700 pages? My God. Is it hate? Is that where the dedication is coming from? That they hate our society and they hate the quote-unquote system that they were raised and reared in? And is it that hate that fuels that kind of dedication? Is it some kind of, I don't know, twisted sort of philosophical perversity that thinks they're doing something better for humanity? Are they inspired? Is it the inspiration? Or are they getting paid by the word? I don't know what it is, but 700 pages is a lot. And it's like incredible. It's like when they come up with like Obamacare. It's like this. Nobody reads it. Nobody has time to read anything. They're like, we'll pass it and then we'll deal with it on the backside. Don't worry about it. Right? We'll write 700 pages. Don't worry about it. If you've got problems with it, we'll deal with it. There's no vetting anymore. The original draft of the guidelines recommended that high school students should read a book titled SEX, the All You Need to Know Sexuality Guide to Get You Through Your Teens and 20s. Where are the parents in here? Oh, I forgot. Parents can't talk to their kids about sex because if they do, they're interfering with the schools. God forbid. They get a visit. Get the knock at the door. Right? Mr. Johnson. It would be a woman, probably. Right. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I'm here to talk about, you're talking about sex with your daughter. Now, you know, here in the state of California, public schools, we are very involved in their education and their sexual awareness. And we just want to make sure that we're both on the same page. Now, as you know, we have a brand new manual, and I would be happy to sit down or send you some videos and some highlights for the manual to make sure that we're all talking in, about, and around the same thing. Because if you're telling your child one thing and we're telling your child another thing, your child's going to be very confused. And you don't want your child to be confused, do you? No. We understand that you may be confused, which is why we put this together. We've laid it all out. You know how many professionals were involved in this? Do you know how many scientists and researchers were involved in putting this together? Some of the best and brightest people, some of the best minds, some of the top researchers in the country. They put their love and their sweat equity into this work for you, for your child. And for that, you should be grateful. And I'm here to remind you of that. And I'm here to remind you, if you step out of line one more time and start talking gibberish about there just being two sexes, we might just take your child away from you. Think about that. Oh, did I say that? I didn't really say that, did I? I would say that we would consider that there might be other options for your child in terms of parenting. All right, here we go. Still reading. The guidance suggests that 7th and 8th grade students should be asked to act out scenarios. Oh my God, I was just thinking this. To teach appropriate behavior. I was just thinking this. I was just having this thought before I read that sentence. It's like, when are they going to instruct kids to like go in front of the classroom, right, and have an anatomically correct doll? Like if it was a guy, right, anatomically correct doll with an erection, demonstrating masturbation, or an anatomically correct female, and the girl goes up and demonstrates, this is the clitoris, and you stimulate the clitoris by doing this, right? I mean, that's coming. That is coming to a school near you at some point in time. Mark my words. The state-approved document includes extremely explicit scenarios. Two students are at a party. One asks the other for oral sex, and daughter asks mom if she will take her to get birth control. Mom replies, "Why do you want birth control? Are you having sex?" Hey, what about chastity? What about not having sex? Oh, they're not going to teach that. Oh, are you kidding me? Abstinence? No way. No way. They're not going to teach that. It's like, what about saying, hey, you got a lot going on in your lives. Why don't you put sex on the back burner for a while? It's okay to not have sex. I wish that would have been the message when I was growing up, to be honest with you. Because that's not the message I got. The message I got was sex is the end all and be all, and you've got to orient your mind towards sex 24/7. And if you're not oriented towards sex 24/7, well, you're just not a good red-blooded American male. You know, by the way, they're selling Playboy now down at Safeway. Okay, here's Liz Wheeler. In California public schools, they're teaching kids about transgenderism in kindergarten, bondage and anal sex in middle school, masturbation as a non-harmful habit, LGBTQ relationship tips. There you go. This is interesting. Tatiana, I think it's Duzyabak, an elementary school teacher from the Sacramento area, said that teachers shouldn't be teaching that material, according to KXTV. Apparently, she didn't go to the right university. The state approved, I shouldn't be teaching that stuff. That's for parents to do, Dyzubak said. The state-approved guidance is sickening, and it's only the most recent example of left-wing adults pushing the perversion of sexuality onto children. It's just scary that what they're going to be teaching, it's pornography. If this continues, I'm not sending them to school. That is the key. That's the key. If you're a parent and this is what happened in England, remember? This is what happened when they tried to do this to a school that was populated by mostly Muslim kids. Muslim parents wanted no part of it. They're like, you teach homosexuality to our kids, and we're pulling them out of school. And they did. They kept them home from school. Now the schools sit around, because they get paid by student. You're sitting around and like argue, wow, our income stream is dissipated because these people had the cojones to keep their kids home from school. Guess what? They suspended the program. Oh, not because they had their kids pulled out of school. No. It wasn't because of that. It was some other bullshit reason. But you know that's exactly why they did that. That's exactly why they did that. Period. End of story. So parents, if you don't like the program, pull your kids out of school. But you got to do it en masse. Can't be one or two. So they'll pick you off. They'll just start picking you off. But if you get 30, 40, 50 other parents to bond together and take your kids out of school, now you're having a different dialogue. Like if Californians are really fed up, take some responsibility for this. Pull your kid out of school. So I'm not bringing them back to school until this is changed. Period. Or dropped. And let's see what the school does then. And again, strength in numbers. That's the Warriors, Golden State Warriors motto. Strength in numbers. Strength in numbers. Safety in numbers. Look, this is what people have done throughout history. Gandhi did it. Gandhi told the people, sit down. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. And he basically brought England to its knees. Done. And guess what happened? India got its wish. They became their own country. Because people didn't do anything. They said, stop, we're just stopping. We're not participating. Right? People go on strike all the time. Sometimes it can be effective. Sometimes it's not effective. But this is what people have done. Right? It gets interesting when you involve children. But children are being politicized anyway. They're being politicized right now before our very eyes. And they're being politicized with climate change. They're being politicized with gun rights. The politicization of children, I think, is unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. It's like, let kids be kids. But we don't have the luxury of that anymore because the social engineering now is reaching deeper and further back. And ultimately, the social engineering is going to get right into the womb. When they start playing with the CRISPR devices and all that stuff, your kid will be socially engineered even before he comes out of the womb. And in fact, there may not even be a womb at some point in the future. Talk about social engineering. They'll have placenta pods. The kids will be kind of hatched in placenta farms. I don't think that that's too far out or too far off. So this is a runaway train. It's something that I'm concerned about. I talk about it from time to time, and I think it's going to get to a point where people will be pushing back. We've got Mars coming into Cancer. I talked about this last night. True Node in Cancer. It's about mothers, maternity, safety, protecting our young. This is not about protecting our young. This 700-page document is not about protecting them. It's about indoctrinating them. And it's about confusing them. Allow kids to be kids. I think it's important. It's difficult. It's very difficult these days. Very, very difficult. I mean, I've been a parent. I can see what's going on in the world, right? In my own way. You want to take care of the child. You want to make sure the child has the best appropriate environment, right? This is what parents do. And we're living in a dicey world to that end. But this is kind of beyond the pale. This is socialization, indoctrination at the highest order. And nobody's really asking for it. It's being done by a small group of people with an agenda. And they're forcing their views, their politics, and their ideology onto a group, much larger group, that may not always agree with it, and most likely doesn't. All right, where are we in terms of the chat world? Let's see what we got going on here. Justice said, I had an idiot woman try to tell me last week that there's now a test you can take to prove your real gender despite your natural genitalia. Celestial design, the motivation of the drones is to feel good, to do good, or desire it. Yep. The monkey saving the fish from drowning. Ani says Atlantis 2.0. Yes, I agree with that. Kathleen says, in reality, it removes us from our souls, our sacred relations with one another, and our ancestors. We only live in the now as dictated by technology. That's a brilliant point. It's a really brilliant point. It's spot on and really salient. Couldn't agree more, Kathleen. What else do we have? Shari, if I was young today, I would most definitely have tried to commit suicide. I would not have been able to handle all this. Leah Michelle says, luckily I moved to Alabama and got out of teaching. Congratulations. She says, Leah also says, I was taking education classes in California during the late 90s and saw the foundations of this agenda being laid through the anti-bias curriculum they were pushing. Yep. Let's see. Get your kids the hell out of California. I agree. Here's what Stephen Chris